It's impossible to know how many are out there. They can affect anyone at any age.
I see people that are really, really fit, that are like operating at the highest level of human performance, and the opposite. It seems like the virus is like picking random people to impact.
All around the world, there are people suffering from long COVID, a syndrome that seems to lead to long-lasting and, in some cases, new or permanent health conditions.
You see a lot of horror stories out there of people, who are now unemployed. The other day I got a message from a patient. She said, "I'm now homeless," and it's heartbreaking.
And what is it about these random people? What do they have in common?
I don't know. Yeah, it's still a mystery to us.
Everything takes way more time than it used to.
Is cutting hard?
Cutting's not hard, but it's just standing, The standing part is the problem.
This is how difficult Katie McLean's life has become.
Hi friends, another day in the life of long COVID. Today I went for my second EMG testing, which is nerve testing. It just felt like I couldn't take a full breath in, and my head felt like I didn't have enough air.
The 43-year-old is a shell of her former self, spending her days resting from her overwhelming fatigue, headaches, and general pain.
Honestly, I can't believe this is still happening 11 months later. I can't do anything that I want to do anymore.
McLean is a long hauler, a common term used to describe someone with long COVID.
When I stand up, my heart rate goes really, really high. So it'll go up to like 100 and 120 in the first 60 seconds that I'm standing.
We first met McLean last fall at her home in Vancouver. She had beaten COVID, but was still experiencing symptoms.
So when we sat with you a year ago, you were suffering from long COVID then.
Yeah.
How are you feeling today?
Not better. After we last talked, I was really gradually starting to have some improvements. And then I had a very bad relapse in February of 2021. And that kind of brought me back to square one.
During McLean's relapse, there was a period of time when she needed a wheelchair to get around. In June, she started improving, but she still relies on a walker.
I was in so much pain. I was so weak. I really thought, this is it. I'm going to deteriorate until I'm gone. I'm really happy that that didn't happen.
On one of our visits, McLean ventured out. The day marked her one-year follow-up appointment at St. Paul's Hospital post-COVID-19 recovery clinic, and she couldn't miss it.
I'm just gonna sit down for a sec.
No problem.
My heart rate just goes up so high. It's like I'm running.
A racing heart rate is just one of the adverse symptoms associated with post-COVID syndrome. Experts say there could be more than 100 different side effects.
The symptom profile is very diverse, and it can be anywhere from really headache predominant, brain fog, difficulties with their cognition, their memory, their thinking, all the way down to paresthesias, numbness and tingling in their toes, to chest pain.
Dr. Jesse Greiner is the medical director of the clinic at St. Paul's. He's also one of McLean's physicians.
Are there a lot of people still long hauling after a year like me?
There are.
What do you attribute that to? Is it just this virus is just so detrimental?
I think the virus does something to the inner workings of the body in a way that we don't yet totally understand. And it's really debilitating for patients. It's honestly quite sad to watch in the patients that are not having success in their road to recovery. It's a tremendous burden that they still bear.
Canada's Public Health Agency says about 60% of those diagnosed with COVID reported one or more symptoms 3 months after initial infection. In Atlanta, 33-year-old Erica Taylor has been shut in her home, alone, fighting her battle with long COVID. Her most debilitating symptom? Brain fog.
I have difficulty sometimes focusing. I have difficulty sometimes coming up with the word that I'm looking for. Sometimes I fail to recognize common objects.
Like the time she forgot what her car looked like.
One time I actually was getting into the car, and halfway, with my leg halfway in it, suddenly didn't recognize my car and thought I was getting into somebody else's car. And it was very scary.
Taylor's journey with COVID started in June 2020. The nonprofit lawyer tried to keep working, but her brain was failing her. When we met her a year ago, she was forced to take a leave of absence.
Take out dishes from dishwasher.
Taylor is now back, working from home, despite not being 100%. To help her get through the day, she has created a system of reminders on her phone, even prompting her to brush her teeth.
I run a program every Saturday where volunteer attorneys are paired up and interview with the clients. Every Saturday I start off the same way. I tell them that I have neurological issues, that I'm forgetful. I still have them come back and ask me questions like, oh, did you mean to send me this? No, I didn't. I'm sorry. This was the one I meant to send you.
Wrap this around your arm.
Taylor's story is a scary one, but part of an emerging pattern. Long haulers, often women, now living with life-altering brain fog.
Let me show you your scans. I want to show you what we're talking about.
And while the understanding of this syndrome is constantly evolving, some studies have shown 1 in 3 COVID sufferers may have had some type of neurological or psychiatric issue.
That means that it makes it the third most prevalent neurologic manifestation after tension-type headache and migraine and ahead of stroke.
It's what Dr. Igor Koralnik and his team at Northwestern Medicine in Chicago are looking into. He oversees the Neuro-COVID-19 clinic and has seen hundreds of patients.
The major population coming to the clinic were younger. They were previously never hospitalized, but thereafter they developed persistent, lingering, and also debilitating neurologic symptoms, including brain fog. Interestingly, 70% of those patients were women.
While the evidence to suggest that it affects more women than men is not concrete, Koralnik has a theory that long COVID is a form of autoimmune disease, a condition where the immune system attacks its own body by mistake.
We know that women are more likely than men to develop autoimmune disease such as multiple sclerosis, and so it is possible that there is a predisposition for this patient to develop the long COVID syndrome, which may in fact be a manifestation of autoimmune diseases.
At Washington University in St. Louis, Dr. Ziad Al-Ali is one of the leading authorities on long COVID. As a clinical epidemiologist, he started to study the syndrome after reading personal stories about the plight of long haulers.
That was sort of the eye-opening for me that, something is happening here and really deserves to be investigated. And really kudos to them, they actually even named the disease.
So Al-Ali and his colleagues went to work, studying the records of more than 70,000 patients who got COVID-19. And what they found was alarming. Some developed serious chronic conditions that would probably need to be treated for the rest of their lives.
When we now talk about COVID, we talk about, the toll of hospitalization and death. That is really only the tip of the iceberg. What we now know, we know that COVID-19 can cause or can lead to increased risk of new onset diabetes and also new onset kidney disease. And what we know about these diseases is that they're really chronic diseases that don't go away.
To make matters worse, everyone is at risk. According to Al-Ali, regardless of whether a person's infection is mild or severe, they are in danger of getting long COVID, meaning even those who never had symptoms could develop lifelong problems associated with the disease.
And why this is important? Because these are the people who represent the majority of people with COVID-19. Most people with COVID-19 don't need to be hospitalized. Most people with COVID-19 nurse it at home and then they get better. But in that group of people, we found that it actually remains a significantly increased risk of long-term manifestations.
As for Erica Taylor, she's seen many doctors, even had a brain scan, but she still doesn't have any answers.
I'm told to do brain puzzles. I have so many brain puzzles now that I've downloaded, and I do those every day. It's been a long journey, definitely a very long journey, and with a whole bunch of trials and errors in a variety of ways.
So far, Taylor has persevered but remains fearful she'll never heal. She's currently on a number of post-COVID clinic waiting lists and hopes they'll be able to help her build upon the tiny improvements she's made over time.
I go through almost daily struggles because I want to be who I was before. You know, I want to be able to react as quickly as I used to and be as on top of things as I was. And it does make me sad, but then I just continue to remind myself that, okay, this is who I am now, and I just have to work with what I have.
On a brisk day in early October of this year, Ken Borg heads to a hockey arena in rural Ottawa. The 60-year-old is about to play in the opening game of the season, and he's ecstatic.
I love hockey, and this group of guys I play with are ideal. Everybody knows each other, their names, and a little bit of chirping back on and off, and everyone plays at their own pace.
Borg's ability to play the sport was put in jeopardy in March 2020. He was struck with a mysterious illness. He was pretty sure it was COVID-19.
It was probably the sickest I felt in my life. It was very scary, and why I call it one of the worst days of my life, because I knew what it was. You know, it's all I could do without panicking, just to keep breathing very shallow breaths and trying not to, think too many bad things or calling 911.
Because it was so early on in the pandemic, Borg never got tested, but he had all the symptoms. Borg says he eventually got a COVID-19 diagnosis from the doctor over the phone.
I had heart palpitations every day, brain fog, still had problems with my lungs, COVID toes, highest blood pressure I've ever recorded.
Every day was difficult. Weeks went by and Borg wasn't getting better. He had to admit to himself he was a long hauler, a condition that can affect those who have survived COVID but are still suffering from its symptoms. It varies from person to person.
I just couldn't do anything that exerted my heart. Lifting some wood, helping people out. I would have the whole afternoon and evening with a concussion kind of hangover feeling for the rest of the day. All I could do was lie down. And it's horrible.
But in May 2021, after being sick for more than a year, he got his first COVID-19 vaccine shot and says he started to feel better.
I did notice after the vaccine a lot of things improved. So I was very curious, hockey, how would it be? I had this huge, dangerous heart rates a year ago playing hockey, so I'm really hoping for some improvement.
There's a small number of patients that feel like the vaccine has cured them of their illness, although that's not persistent in all cases either.
Dr. Jesse Greiner has been treating and studying patients at the post-COVID-19 recovery clinic at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver.
We have spoken to some patients who say as soon as they did get the vaccine, their long COVID symptoms went away. Is there some legitimacy to that?
Yeah, it's difficult to say because there's still so much that we don't understand about how long COVID works. It's possible that there's a psychological impact.
What is the potential risk of fully vaccinated people who get the virus ending up with long COVID?
It's a little bit too early to know the answer to that question. There was recently a report published out of the UK that suggested that patients that had breakthrough cases that were previously vaccinated were potentially at a 50% reduction in the risk of developing long COVID. So that has me optimistic that actually our vaccine rollout will curb the amount of long COVID that we see in this province.
At the arena, Borg is putting his ticker to the test. It's the first time hitting the ice with his league since being in recovery mode, and he wants to see if his body can handle it. To track his improvement, Borg is wearing a heart monitor. It didn't take long before he had to bench himself. Borg's legs were fine, but his heart was giving him trouble.
I did carry the puck in, set something up and had a bit of fun. And when I looked at my watch, it was 165. And so 165 beats per minute, which is above the danger zone for for me being 60 years old. Okay, Greg.
After almost an hour, the game was complete.
Whew. Made it.
The league doesn't keep score, but Borg tallied up his progress.
So I've been checking it every shift, and it's dramatic. You know, it goes up to 150 when I play defense, and normally I'm a forward, so I've just been taking it really, really easy, and it's still getting very high.
It seems Borg still has a little way to go to get back to his pre-COVID form, but he is encouraged by the fact that he is stronger than before.
I'm building up strength, I'm walking farther. I was taking naps every day for the last year and a half. I've moved off that. I'd like to know why I have this crazy high heart rate, but I'm hoping I will see some improvements over time.
I'm so exhausted today.
For more than a year, Katie McLean has been in and out of the hospital trying to get answers, but doctors still don't know why she isn't getting better.
Hands on your chest. On 3. 1, 2, 3.
The once healthy and avid walker has been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which affects blood flow. Both conditions may have been triggered by the virus.
For me to try and do a normal activity, there's a price to pay. So my body doesn't have the energy to do activities of daily living.
One explanation for what's causing long COVID is T cells in the body, which normally go from cell to cell to find those infected and destroy them, are reacting differently against the coronavirus, and experts don't know why. There is a growing body of evidence showing reduced T cell counts in hospitalized COVID patients with severe pneumonia.
At this point, we can say that the response of the T cell from the long haulers is strikingly different from the one who are the COVID convalescent, who don't have any lingering symptoms.
In the lab, Dr. Igor Koralnik has been actively pursuing this hypothesis.
And the emerging picture that we get from this study is consistent with an ongoing, persistent, low-level infection with the virus in the long haulers, which we are currently investigating.
But without any definitive answers, McLean is left to manage her symptoms mostly on her own.
So this is my supplement cupboard.
She takes a handful of supplements every day and sees a physiotherapist. It's affected every aspect of her life.
What's the toll been like on your partner?
Well, it's been difficult because really she had to care for me full time for many, many months and do everything. We definitely have had some rough times, but I think it's made us stronger to just get through all this adversity together. Sorry.
McLean is trying to turn adversity into strength, hoping that one day she'll be rid of the sickness and walk away from her life as a long hauler.
The doctor believes that long haulers are going to get better.
Yeah.
Do you believe that?
I have to believe that because otherwise I think I would feel a lot of despair and depression on top of the other, pain and difficulties that I'm dealing with. So I do try and remain optimistic about it.